Hi, this is John Mancini. I'd like to welcome you to the second installment of my series on information management meets E2O, meets mobile, meets consumer, meets control, or the Big Bang Theory and information management. Like the Big Bang Theory, my episodes have three-word names, and so this one is focused on the Facebook dilemma, the first of five that I'll talk through. What I want to talk about with regards to the Facebook dilemma is the confusion that exists in most organizations between the utilization of social technologies outside the enterprise and the utilization of those same technologies inside the enterprise. Now, unfortunately, the preoccupation with utilization of social technologies outside the enterprise has led to this kind of reaction within organizations. This is an ad back from the early days of email. And back in the early days of email, basically senior executives in organizations reacted with rather predictable approaches. Namely, we can't allow our people to access email from the office. They'll send all the secrets right out the door. They'll waste time on it. We had the same kind of a reaction when it came to utilization of the internet at the desktop level. And people are reacting to social technologies in a rather similar way right now, particularly in the context of externally facing technologies. So for example, in some of our surveys, we find that 40 to 50% of organizations don't even allow access to Facebook or social sites from inside the firewall. Now, that would be bad enough in and of itself, but what's also happening is that this perspective focused on externally based social sites is coloring how people view the potential of these technologies to transform organizations from the inside out. This quote was made by Tony Zingali, CEO of Jive, at a conference I was at last week, the Enterprise 2.0 conference, and I think it's really indicative of the opportunity that exists within organizations as they start thinking more systematically about social technologies. The impact that social technologies have had on our personal lives in terms of the use of activity streams in creating a consciousness about what goes on in our social networks that we didn't ever have before is something that organizations are finally starting to realize has applicability in terms of productivity and return on investment inside the organization. So I want to talk about behaviors and policies, and some of this comes from Charlene Lee's new book that I really like quite a bit called Open Leadership. One of the points that she makes is that we have to understand that people come to social technologies from different levels of perspective in terms of utilizing these technologies in their private lives. And so if you look at behaviors, look at people that basically are just watchers and then move to progressively increased levels of engagement by people in social technologies in their public networks that they engage with, you can kind of see that we have to be conscious of this degree of progression in terms of how people will utilize these tools inside the enterprise as well. We asked this question specifically in a business context in the last couple of weeks to our community. What have you done in the last 3 months in a business context with regards to these tools? And what you can see is that we are still in maybe the first inning of a 9-inning game. We might not even be in the first inning, we might be in the pregame right now in terms of people utilizing social tools in the context of business. And you can see that people have not really crossed over yet to widespread adoption. Bevan Hernandez at the Enterprise 2.0 conference, she's from Penn State in charge of their social initiative, had some very interesting perspectives when you start thinking about the two dynamics associated with social initiatives within organizations. So the first thing you need to look at is how connected people are to the organization's purpose. Then you look at how connected they are with social technologies. And if you do that, you come across a very interesting dynamic when it comes to thinking about change management and the introduction of social initiatives within organizations. And her point is that obviously you want people to ultimately wind up in the upper right-hand corner with a clear connection to the business purpose of the organization and widespread use of social technologies. But people don't come to that point naturally. And how you deal with a type A kind of person who understands the organization's mission but isn't particularly skilled in social technologies is very different from how you deal with the social butterflies of the world, who might be the people that organize all those birthday parties in the conference room, but maybe you're a little more disconnected from the organization's core purpose. And how you manage change across these 4 different kinds of people in organizations is very, very fundamental in terms of thinking about how your strategy ought to evolve. Another dynamic that needs to be put in place is to think through the framework that you use from a policy environment to govern your social initiatives. And this site, socialmediagovernance.com, is a very good one in terms of having a cross-section of different social media policies. I tend to be a minimalist when it comes to what I think organizations ought to do. I think organizations are much better asking forgiveness rather than permission when it comes to social technologies. But I understand that that control continuum, that control pendulum that exists in organizations is very different depending on size of organization, on degree of litigiousness in a particular industry or with regards to a particular organization. But the main point is that this is a policy environment, not a technology-oriented environment, that you need to think through in terms of the policy that will govern your social initiatives. If you'd like more information on E2O technologies, you should go to our Enterprise 2.0 site at e2ocommunity.com. Or if you're more interested in the control side of information management, our records management site at ermcommunity.com is a good place to start. And again, as I always say, if you want to follow me, you can follow me at jmancini77 or on my blog at Digital Landfill.